Hi, this is Gayle with BERNINA of Naperville, and happy December. And it is our Fat Quarter Club, and I am just really sure deep down in my heart that you're going to love this project that we picked this month because it's super cute. So it's paper pieced, and that's paper pieced foundation pieced. So it's a stitch and flip technique where you follow the numbers and you have a cute little thing. And then we are doing a little bit of decorative stitching and then a little bit of quilting. So roll up your sleeves and let's get to it. So this is our super cute project for this month, and I just love it. You know, there's something about me. I just really like a gingerbread house, no matter if it's made of gingerbread, fabric, or whatever. So I hope you enjoy it as well. Now, I found this pattern on Etsy from a company called Quilty Pie Handmade, and the pattern's only $3, and it's a paper piece pattern. And what that means is you're going to need a printer with some printer paper this month. And I want you to know that I just printed mine on the paper and I didn't really pay any attention to the size, but my little gauge was not printed to exactly 1 inch. So I don't want you to stress over the size of this. My finished block size turned out to be about 9.5 inches, but the intention is that this is a 10-inch finished block. So it measures 10.5 inches when you're done. But if you don't really care what size it comes out, then just stick that thing through the printer and spit it out and make whatever size you want, right? So as you know, we've got our BERNINA of Naperville Fat Quarter Club kits that you can find right on our BERNINA of Naperville webpage. That's BERNINAofNaperville.com. You just search Fat Quarter Club and you'll see it along with many other projects that we've done through the years. Some other things that you're going to need is an add a quarter ruler. I use a hot ruler to kind of fold my paper over. You'll see in just a moment how I use that. And then thread for piecing, thread for embellishing. I used all Metler silk finish thread on mine. And then I thought I'd mix it up a little bit this month and have you try a number 8 jean stitch foot. Now the number 8 foot comes in two versions. There's the regular number 8 or the number 8D, which is for your machines with the dual feed. I also used an open toe foot number 20. You can use 20, 20C, 20D, whatever's appropriate for your machine to do the decorative stitching. You're also going to need an iron, a rotary cutter mat and rulers, maybe a stiletto, about 14.5 inches of batting. And that's a 14.5 inch square, by the way. Dowel and finial ends if you choose to hang this on the wall, and maybe even some ribbon or twine for a small wall hanging. In addition to what's on the list here, you're also going to want some medium weight stabilizer, and that's just when we do our decorative stitching. So the fabric is 6 fat quarters, like it is every month, and we've used vintage walnut and snow in our art gallery solids. Then we have 4 collections from Riley Blake, and it's from the Twas collection. There's the Sugar Plum Stripe, Not Even a Mouse in white sparkle and red sparkle, and Stockings Were Hung in pink sparkle. Now, one thing I want you to really understand is I picked the fabrics based on how I wanted to make it, but you could just as easily pick any of these fabrics and mix them up. If you want a brown house with a white roof and you want to do the prints as the background, that's totally fine. So let's talk about cutting. When you cut out your pieces, for paper piecing, we don't really have to be very accurate with our cutting. That's a wonderful thing about paper piecing, but I like to kind of cut my pieces down so that I can have them be a little bit more manageable as I do this paper piecing technique. And so I've given you the sections and what you need to cut for each section. There are 5 sections. And then, of course, we're going to be cutting some fabric for our borders, backing, and our binding. But what is paper piecing? Well, there are 2 definitions of paper piecing. One is completed by hand, where you sew with little papers. And then this is called English paper piecing. Not what we're going to do today, but I've given you a link on How to Sew Hexies by Molly and Mama, and maybe you'll give that a try. It is a very relaxing TV time kind of activity. But the kind that we're going to be doing today is called foundation paper piecing. And this is done by printing a template on paper, which you're going to see in a moment. The shapes are numbered, and then you assemble in the order of the shapes with the stitch and flip method. And this is called foundation paper piecing. And I've given you a link there that you can click on to watch our tutorial. And you're probably wondering, where do you get this additional handout that you see here? Well, you can find it in the description of this month's YouTube video, which is on our Bernina of Naperville YouTube channel, but we also put it on our BERNINAofNaperville.com site under our Fat Quarter Club product. So let's get into this, shall we? Well, I hope that you like this month's project as much as we do. I found this super cute little paper pieced mug rug. It's a 10-inch quilt block. You could use this for a wall hanging, whatever. I'm going to be making mine into just a little thing to hang on the front of our apartment door to just like bring a little holiday cheer, right? So like I mentioned, this is a paper piecing pattern, and I have the link for you in the handout that's attached to this video or available on our BERNINAofNaperville.com website. It's from Quilty Pie Handmade on Etsy. Very good instructions, by the way, but we're going to be altering ours a little bit. You'll see here that there are some little brown pieces to make the scallop edge. Well, we're going to do ours in all solid brown, and that's because we are going to be adding some decorative stitches with our sewing machine, just, to keep those skills in order, right? And so this paper piecing project is done in different sections. So for instance, this is true size, and when you print this pattern on your printer, you want to make sure that you do a test and that this is indeed a 1-inch square. Otherwise, your block will not come out to the 10 inches finished. Now, you can also print it smaller if you wanted a smaller mug, but our instructions are just to do it straight up as it's intended to be by the designer. So we're going to do this piece just the way it is here, and we're going to do this piece with a slight alteration. So that means all of these little gray and white pieces here, we're going to treat that as if it's all one piece. So what you're going to get in our instructions that will assist you with this are the sizes of all of these fabrics that you see here, to cut them the right size to fit over this. And of course, my cutting instructions will give you plenty if your little piece slips around or whatever. So this is going to just be one piece. When we look at the second page, this one's also going to be piece. So the reason why these look like they're in different segments, right, is because you're going to paper piece this weird shape, paper piece this weird shape, this weird shape, and this weird shape, and then those weird shapes all get assembled together. And then there's even a couple of other pieces for you that you're going to need to put together. So here, right here, that's another area where we're going to treat all of these pieces as one piece rather than a ton of individual pieces, so we can add some decorative stitching. And I take you through this stuff step by step, so no worry. I'm also going to show you how to fussy cut one of our cute little pieces here. I thought it would be cute to do like a little red piece there in the door. All right, well, let's get started. The first thing that I want to do is just kind of trim these guys so that they're not all smushed together. And so we have 5 of these units. So I'm liberating all of them in these easy to manage pieces. Then we're going to take our pre-cut piece and place it. This is 1A. And we actually have to put our pieces on the back. And it makes it kind of hard to see the lines. So if you have a light box, it's really easy to do this. If you don't have a light box, you can use your TV screen or your iPad screen or maybe a window or something like that. And then I'm going to pin it into place so it doesn't move around with a straight pin. And that's going to hold it so I can flip it around. Now, here is my add a quarter ruler. This one is the 12-inch one, but this also comes in 6-inch. And it's called add a quarter because it's got that little groove on it. And that groove is going to butt up against this hot hammer. It just happens to be just the right thickness. So when I fold my pieces over on the line, I can butt my add a quarter ruler ledge right up to it. So 1A is where we have our brown, and then 2 is the next piece that we're going to add because we go in order. So 1, 2, 3, 4, just like that. And so I'm laying this down, I'm folding my paper over, and then I'm positioning my ruler into place just as soon as I slide this light box to the side. And then let's give that a cut. And now that's trimmed that to 1/4 of an inch away from the drawn line. Now I'm going to place a piece of fabric that's been cut. I think these are cut like 1.25 inches or something like that. And now this is piece 2. And then I'm also going to pin that into place. And then I'm ready to take this over to my machine where I'm going to stitch right on that line between piece 1A and 2. Now, I'm using a number 8 jean stitch foot because I like that groove right down the middle of the foot. I can line that right up down the line. And if you don't have an 8, I think the 880s and the 790s come with an 8D, and that's got the little coated piece, and you would use this with your dual feed, but I'm just using the regular 8 on my 880, and I'm going to stitch on that line. And, you know, this is where it's just a tiny little piece here that we're stitching, but I actually take my stitches and I make them go really close together. So I've lowered my straight stitch to like 1.8. And then I'm going to trim the excess off of my little pieces. And now it's time to add piece 3. So out comes my hot hammer. I'm going to fold down my paper, get my add 1/4 ruler back on there, and trim the excess brown away. And then I'm going to grab another 1.25 inch strip. And I'm doing something here because everybody is going to do this the first time, right? I'm putting this piece on there that isn't quite big enough. I know. I was trying here. I'm trying. And the thing of it is, these little stitches that we decrease to 1.8 millimeters, they're not the funnest thing to rip out of there, but maybe, just maybe, this fabric will cover my space there. I don't know. It looks close. Let's turn it over and see what happens. Let's see. Okay. No, I'm going to be a little bit short. Well, it's good that I did this because now I can teach you how to rip, right? So you're going to lift your fabric back, and I use my rotary cutter, and I just add a little bit of pressure right on those threads, and I just push, pull, push, pull, and then of course pick out all my ickiness, and then sometimes it perforates the back of the paper like that. So I use my embroidery stabilizer tape or the expert tape from OESD. And that's going to kind of hold that together. It's going to allow me to stitch through it. And it's going to, we just pretend like nothing ever happened. So I grab a piece that's the appropriate size. And now we're going to stitch that one on. And I over sew across the seams just a little bit, like you see me do there. Oh, and one more thing that I like to do when I'm doing paper piecing, I program my foot control so that it cuts instead of needle up down. It's just, I find like I keep pushing buttons, I keep pulling away, whatever. So I program my foot control. So now when I hit the heel part of my foot control, it cuts. All right, so now I'm using a little pressing tool. This is, a little Nifty Notions bundle that's got a hera marker and stuff. It's just easier than going back and forth to the iron. And now we've got piece number 4 that we're going to place on using my add 1/4 ruler. And piece 4 is the top of the chimney. And I used the little stripy fabric for this piece, but you know what? You can use whatever you want. If you want an entirely brown house, that's fine with me. But there's my little stripe. And now we just need to be careful that it doesn't wiggle when we take it over to the machine and stitch it. And remember, you're always stitching with the paper side up on those lines. And then we're going to trim that. And then we're just going to follow all of these pieces, cover this whole piece until it's a weird shape. So next goes this bigger piece. So we're going to stitch that. Sometimes I double check and make sure that they're going to fit, but there we do. I just stitched it, flopped it over, use my little finger pressing tool to crease it, and then we'll add piece number 7, which goes along the top. So I'm going to make sure I have a nice clean cut here on the top of this piece. And I gave you cutting instructions for these that are generous. So you don't have to worry, like that it's exactly the right size for what you need. You have a little bit of wiggle room. So then once the final piece is on there and you crease it with your finger pressing tool, we're going to turn it upside down and use our add a quarter ruler, and we're going to cut right on those dotted lines. The solid line is the seam line, and the dotted lines are 1/4 inch away from the solid seam line. And there we have it. And now you also might have noticed that it is mirrored of the original piece that you saw, and that's how it should be. The finished piece has the chimney on the right. And now here's our long skinny strip. This one didn't require going to a light box for. I just kind of put a piece of the brown that I cut, and then I'm just going to carefully use my little hot hammer to trim just a little bit on each edge. And, I kind of laugh about is this tiny little white piece really important on the end here? But yes, there are no small pieces in paper piecing. And then we're going to add another piece to the opposite end, stitch on that line, and flip it over. And then we're going to trim this one down just like we did section A. We're going to follow cutting on our dotted line, which is 1/4 inch away from the solid line. Now for the other units, you're going to do exactly the same thing, starting by following the numbers and then going out. This is unit C. And the only thing about it is there are lots of little teeny pieces. So you have to be really careful because, quite frankly, I feel like the machine wiggles more on the little tiny pieces. So you just have to be accurate with your trimming and even your pressing. But it just takes a little bit of tenacity. And this is probably the piece that takes the longest because it's got the most pieces in it. And these are the pieces where we cut in half on the diagonal because, why waste a big piece of fabric for these tiny little pieces, right? And also be careful and double check under the paper when you put these little pieces down that they don't twist around on you. And there I'm kind of pulling a little bit of the paper, but it doesn't matter. This paper is going to be ripped off when we're done with the project anyway, so we don't care. We don't care if we rip the paper. And then just giving it a last little finger press as we add the top piece and the bottom. And then we're just going to continue in the same manner for the rest of the sections. I will jump ahead for just a moment so we can talk about fussy cutting our little piece on our last section, section E. So I want to use this little mouse hanging the wreath. I think that'll be perfect for the door. So I'm cutting a little bit more of a piece than I actually need for the door. And I'm going to take it over to my piece and just kind of place it down to make sure it's the right size and everything, make sure it'll fit in that door area. And you can see I have a lot of just scraps that I'm going to use to make that little curve above the door. So I've taken my little fussy cut piece over to the light board so that I can see where to place it exactly, so I can see through that paper. And then I'm going to carefully turn this over, and now I'm going to start sewing those little scraps around those wee tiny little pieces at the top of the door. And then I'm just going to cut, sew, flip, fold, cut, sew and flip, fold, cut, sew and flip 4 times at the top of the door. And then we'll add the sides. And then after the sides are on, we'll add the background fabric on the sides. and then a top and bottom. Boom. Now that we have all of our odd pieces, we can assemble them. And it's really important to kind of connect them with these important junctures. So see how I have like a little puppy dog tail at the end there, and then that flat piece is going to go flush with the bottom. We're going to put a pin at the top and bottom, and then take this over to our machine and stitch right on that line. Don't forget to remove your pins before you get to them. And then because we're still doing our tiny stitches, we don't really need to back tack. Then we're going to press. And now the next piece that goes on is really important that we line things up and we take the time to do that. And normally I don't recommend ripping if you do something wrong, but this is a real focal point on the house. So try to line this guy up as best as you possibly can. And there's going to be a little bit of overlap where you're going to have some of the brown and from the top piece that you see me putting on here to the bottom bigger piece, it's going to kind of make a little triangle inside that seam. And then once you get that lined up, then you're going to line up the bottom. You're going to stitch on the line again. And you're just making sure that juncture where that flat part of the roof meets this piece is going to align perfectly. And then you can see there at the top, my little piece did indeed line up perfectly. So now we're going to add the chimney portion. And the thing we just want to watch with this one is that we line up the angle at the top and the bottom so that the little point is sticking out a little bit, just like we had the dog ear on our first piece. And then we line up the bottoms as we go along here. And then finally, the bottom piece, really, there's one way that you could do this is align the centers and pin those together and then pin on each end. But I'm striving just to make sure that I get the bottom of my house centered in under those gables. And once again, this is creating like a weird little triangle in the seam as well, just like when we attached our roof. So you just want to kind of double check that. And, you know, if you're ever nervous or timid about this, you can just put a straight pin through there along that seam line, just to kind of make sure when you try this out that you've got it in the right spot. And see how I pinned that and I'm unfolding this over, and that looks good to me. So I'm ready to stitch my seam. And just lining up at the end when you get to it, just to double check and make sure you're on the right path. And there it is. And it looks really cute. I love it. And the one thing that I want to do is just kind of double check the size. Now, I know that mine is smaller because I didn't check my little measurement gauge at the beginning, but I just wanted to trim it up, get it nice and square, then measure it so I could add the top and bottom borders. So I decided to add a little extra border around my piece, and I just cut 1 inch by 9.5 and 1 inch by 9.5, and I'm going to stitch this to the top and to the bottom and press to the borders. Then I'm going to add another 1 inch strip to both sides. Now that I've added that cute little border, I'm going to add my little mice. Now, what I had to do with this is because this is directional. I have my mice going this way that are going to be my top pieces here, like this. And then I have mice going vertically. That'll be my pieces on the sides. And so I'm just going to go ahead and add these, just like I added the top and bottom. So there it is. It's done, except for the embellishment that we're going to do on the little gables here. So we're going to turn it upside down, and I'm going to rip all the paper out of here. This is something I hate and enjoy at the same time. It is very satisfying to pick all the paper out, I have to say, but it makes a mess. So I'm going to rip this out, and I'll meet you back at the machine, and I'll show you what stitch we're going to use to embellish this little guy. To do our decorative stitching, I'm going to layer a piece of tearaway stabilizer with batting and the top. Then once I do the decorative stitching, we'll peel the tearaway stabilizer off the back, and then we'll put our backing, which is the rest of our cute little mice, on the back, and then we'll do some quilting. So I settled on this stitch, which is 732, but I brought it into my stitch designer. I selected all, and then I added triple stitch. And then we're also going to be playing with the mirror function because I'm going to stitch this from the bottom of the gables up. But you can see with this tearaway on my little tester, it looks great. And it went through that batting lovely. And I'm using my 20 D foot to do this. So pretty cool, huh? You see the 20D foot has the dual feed mechanism in the back that's going to help feed my fabric through with the stabilizer and the batting and everything that's under here. So I'm just going to center my little, I don't know, is this a gable, the A-frame or whatever of this gingerbread house just there and go right up the middle of this brown fabric. And then I can just pivot right down the middle here. It just a little lucky coincidence there. And now I'm going to aim down the middle of the piece going on this side. Now, another way that I could have done this is when I got up to the top of the little house, I could have disengaged mirror and stitched the design all the way back in this direction, but it just happened to turn out perfectly this way. All right, so while we're here, another stitch that I just love to use is our stitch number 1356. And I'm just going to go around the door with this stitch. And I'm going to make sure that when the needle lands in the center, it goes just in the ditch. And I've shortened this stitch to 4.1 in length and narrowed it to 4.9 in millimeters. In width, I mean. And now I'm going to do that same stitch around the heart. All right, so look how cute it is, right? And so now I'm just going to rip the stabilizer off by tearing into it. And then I decided that I'm just going to do loop-de-loops over the entire thing with quilting. Anybody can do this. It's so easy. And we're going to make big ones so it doesn't take very long to do. Because I don't think we need to do too much fanciness here with this house. So making sure that my little critters are going in the right direction, I'm going to sandwich this onto the backing. And now let's quilt. I've got my Bernina stitch regulator on the machine, and I'm going to be using Bernina stitch regulator or BSR mode 1, and I am just going to go make uppercase E's. So let me show you what I mean by that. All right, so let's start. I want to warn you, I made a little snafu there, so I'm starting again. So we're going to go needle up, down with the heel tap, bring our thread up, and now we're gently going to stitch. And I'm using my foot control, but the foot control is really like a button. It's just on or off. So now I'm just going to trim this up, and I'm going to bind only the sides and the bottom. Then I'm going to put a little hanging sleeve at the top. Now I'm going to cut 5 pieces, 2.5 inches by the width of the fat quarter, join them together, and then fold that piece in half. Okay, so I have put the binding on the back of my quilt here. So I'm going to stop here and trim the rest of the binding off there. And I probably didn't need 5 pieces. I needed more like 3 pieces, okay? But if you wanted to go all the way around, you might need 5, all right? So now I'm gonna press these pieces to the back nice and flat, and then I'm gonna press it around to the front to get my nice miter. And you know, I'm kind of proving to you time and time again that there's more than one way to do a quilt binding, right? So this time I'm using my number 8D foot. You can see there it's got like this slightly open area here. And if I line it up just on the inside of that foot, I get right on the edge of my binding. And I can stitch this nice and flat and pretty. And that's what I'm going to do all the way around. And I'm redistributing this pin so I can really get in there nicely. And then land in the corner and pivot. Gonna take one more baby stitch in there. There we go. And then one baby stitch, remove our pin. And there's what it looks like on the back. And on the front. Okay, let's put the little hanging part on. So I've taken a piece that's leftover scraps, and this is about 5 inches by the width of my little house, except I cut it about 1 inch longer. And that's because I've turned up my edges, just folded it over twice and stitched. And then I'm gonna press this like this, and then I'm gonna press it into my seam and into my seam, and that's just gonna give me a cute little reinforced sleeve to hold a little 1/4 inch dowel here so that I can hang my piece up. Now, I want you to notice that this is just a wee bit longer or a wee bit wider, but that's okay. Makes it a little bit too awkward if you go right to the edge. You see that raw edge there. So this is gonna be just a little bit longer. You could make it even longer if you wanted to. There's not a whole lot of measuring with this, everybody. So I want you to enjoy this process and finish this little wall hanging or mug rug or whatever, however you want. And once you have everything pressed, it's gonna look like this. So fold, 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 kind of how we would do a strap or something like that. But now I'm going to just carefully pin this into position so that I catch both sides of my quilt top here. And as you're pinning it, you just kind of want to make sure that it's even on, all down the edge here. And you can do a decorative stitch. One of the things that you could do is one of these little stitches. That would be really cute on here. So let's go over to the machine. So I'm putting on my number 20D foot, and my 880 keeps track of all of the stitches exactly the way that I stitched them and adjusted them in this history stitches feature. So I'm just gonna hit my history stitch feature and use my stitch number 1356. And I'm gonna start in a little bit on this piece, and I'm gonna stitch forward. And then if you need to see this a little closely, let me zoom in and I'm gonna go backwards. And now it's going to do its magic. And I'll pull my pins out before I get to them. That's always a good idea. Backwards a little bit. There we go. And then this is adorable. And the back looks just as cute. And the back looks just as cute. All right, well, I hope that you enjoyed making this as much as we did because we loved it. And if you want to see more tutorials and other things, don't forget to check out our Bernina of Naperville YouTube channel. It's easy. It's youtube.com/Bernina of Naperville. And there you can like, comment, and subscribe. So happy holidays, happy everything, whatever it is that you celebrate. We really hope that you're doing it with the ones that you love. Cheers.